Welcome to Becoming Full of Yourself, the show where fulfillment is not a finish line, it's a way of being. I'm Ebony Allard, master coach, energy specialist, soul contract guide, here to help you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. In each episode, we explore what it means to lead from the inside out, embody your truth, and become so full of yourself that you overflow. Let's get into it. Dory, would you, before I launch straight into conversation and forget to do it, for those who don't know you, would you give us a little intro?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me into your metaphorical front room, if you like, to cozy up and have this conversation. It's a delight. So, I'm Dory Walker, and I'm going to say I'm an alchemist. That is at the essence and the heart of what it is that I bring to this world. If I'm asked to put it in a box and give it a label. Yeah. So, and I would almost give it a pretext also of saying a human alchemist. And so in that way, then it's also to say, well, what are we talking about when we're talking about human alchemy? That piece that we are multidimensional beings. So the physical, the mental, the emotional, the psychic, the energetic, the spiritual, the whole realm. And I guess for 25, 30 years, a lot of that early alchemy work has been very much come through a disciplined and dedicated path of yoga. You know, I've done that for multiple decades and worked in that in a very deep way that has led me on to other modalities. Yeah, so into this sort of full spectrum piece of supporting humans to tap into and live into their alchemical infinite potential. So really, that's it. And I do that through lots of retreats. I've facilitated retreats for years in person, and I love that work, and training courses and mentoring and coaching. Yeah. I mean, there's something else that I feel is very alive for me at the moment, and I'm really looking forward to stepping into this more and more. I'm a mum. I've got two incredible daughters that just grow every single day. And so part of that is, you know, even today after school, I had other young people in my home, and I know that that only gets to grow. And so I guess over the next coming 5-10 years, I'm going to have a lot of teenagers. I pray that they'll, you know, still be in my space, a lot of teenagers. And part of my journey over the last 10 years has been on the red path, on the shamanic red path. And I've been vision questing and moon dancing, and I'm now a sacred pipe carrier. And part of that is also being initiated into holding sweat lodges. So I really see a big part of my medicine stepping into more on the earth and, you know, with my daughters at my side and their community, like really being part of holding the next generation to be with the elements and sit in prayer and do that. That feels alive, and that feels really important of that piece.
It does. It feels so important. And it's such an interesting part of my understanding of alchemy and of fullness. And I didn't think this is where this conversation was going to go, but we will go there because it's leading us there. When I was in my maiden years and I was a child, I was a girl, I was full of myself. And there was no hubris to that. I just was. And then what I describe as the gaze fell upon me. And like Narcissus, I was consumed by it. I didn't know how to continue being full of myself without it being a performance. And I was terrified of being seen or caught off guard. I didn't want anyone. And I actually remember one of the reasons I broke up, such a Sagittarius moon, by the way, but one of the reasons I broke up with my very first ever boyfriend was because he knew me better than I did, and I did not like it. So as you're talking about that stage of development, growth, where we get to really alchemize all of who we are and meet our magician, because our adolescent years are the magician years, right?
Yeah.
And I am, I'm a sage, I'm an alchemist, I'm a magician, and I'm full of air and fire. And yet there was a shadow that weaved through those years that stayed with me for another 20 that I'm owning and harnessing now. That is my current alchemy, I think. Like really like being with the darkness in myself and not running from it, not being distracted from it, not avoiding anymore. Actually, I was just thinking about my purpose, Gate 28, and Richard describes it as an avoid dance, right? Like where we're kind of avoiding the void in this dance of avoidance where we don't want to live and we don't want to die. And I felt such recognition for that space as I kind of go through this next bit of my life. And I'm curious how that journey was for you, and then how like seeing it coming up in your daughters is landing for you now.
I love this. So yeah, we didn't think we didn't know when the conversation was going to go, but it does feel, and it's interesting because we had a little chat before this, or you had, I said things that we could talk about. I think one of them was this piece about a journey of empowerment and reclamation and ripping up the rules and really claiming our own spotlight and our full of honest self.
Yeah.
And so much of what you've just said resonates for me too, as a small child, as I see in my girls now, they're just full of themselves in the most beautiful way that a human being is. Untethered, unbound. And I really believe that it doesn't have to be inevitable. And yet there is a alchemical change and a shift that happens in puberty where we do maybe, receive a gaze or just receive ourselves and experience ourselves in different ways. So in answer to your question, definitely there was bits that I experienced through that journey of puberty into young adulthood that shut me down massively. That comments, passing things that I took so deeply into a wound that it took me into my 30s. Really, actually, it took me becoming a mother to outgrow and see, oh shit, I can't hold this anymore because it's ridiculous and it's like kind of choking me. So it's this paradoxical piece in a way of feeling like, oh God, I really don't want my daughters to have some of the experiences that I had that kind of impacted my confidence and my ability to stay fully expressed and full of myself and safe to be seen and all of those things. And obviously trusting in that they have their own soul's journey and contract and everything to go through. Yet, I do think they're on a different path. And some of the bits that I said at the beginning, I feel like having our children with us, and my kids have had a very different childhood than I had, and then witnessing me as an adult being full of myself and being fully placed, which I know I am. I know you've looked a bit at my charts, but fully placed in alignment with my soul contract and my dharma. And that I do not think I witnessed that in my parents at all. And so that piece that I feel like is a gift in it to be with anybody that is in that state. So, I have such gratitude that it was interesting. Had my 47th birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I had a tarot reading for it, and it was great. But she was just like, you're just like straight where you're meant to be, and actually what is happening now normally happens at 49, so you're like 2 years ahead. That's because you've been like on your Dalek path, clearly in your soul contract for such a long time. It's like, it's all good. So in that way, it encourages me to continue to trust in the void and the change and step more and more and more, because that's all life is, isn't it? In this maturation and involvement, more and more and more into my clear purpose, with oozing full of myself, out of myself, and to include my daughters in spaces and circles of other women where that becomes the representative of the norm, if you like. Because I definitely didn't have that as an example.
I did. And I rejected it because, and I think this is something, I've been talking about this quite a lot recently, not for myself, but in various different spaces. In the 80s, it wasn't cool to be called Ebony. It wasn't cool to be doing yoga. It wasn't cool to spend time in a vegan commune. It wasn't cool to grow up around sweat lodges. It wasn't cool. Like, wasn't cool. There was nothing cool about this reality and the way that I lived. And, I wanted mainstream. I wanted the same as everybody else. I didn't want to stick out. I wanted what everyone else had. And I hated how different my experience was. And when I see now children growing up around, and that's not to say, that my parents were totally stable. They were very ahead of their time. And they are incredible humans, but they were also very young. They were 21 and 23 or 24, and and completely pioneering. And I only really get it now when I look at my chart. I'm like, oh, I see an Aries. Oh, right. Oh, it makes so much more sense to me now, but it hasn't up until this point in my life. But what I do think is different is that the culture isn't so witch woundy and outcasty and misfitty around that. And so it can fit. And I think there is it's much more safe to be full of yourself. It's much more accepted and desired, actually, to find your purpose and live your dharma and meet your karma. And I think that I hope very much that there will be less reaction and much less kind of pinging that I did, because there is a certain amount of cultural grounding and stability and desire and maturation as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, it's changing sands the whole time, isn't it? And just with there's a lot going on in the world, but there is also a lot more consciousness. And, just even on that note, I think, and I speak from personal experience on this, and I've spoken to so many of my peers that had been on, I hate the word like spiritual journey, but whatever, for the last 30 years, that things that states of consciousness that 50 years ago, 40 years ago, people had to take themselves away in caves and out of society and really did it. Like we were talking before, the telepathy channels are just coming back on. The consciousness is expanding. The veils are lifting. It is like paradigm shift anyway that our young people are growing up in, and how they experience themselves and that interaction with the world. So I feel like we've got a bit away from that original question, but I really coming back to this piece of like knowing thyself. So, one of the questions that one of the conversations that I have with my daughter, particularly my like 11-year-old, that where things are definitely like starting to shift with her, it's really already encouraging her and being with her to get to know the voices in her head and the stories in her head, and to know that that's not who she is. And so to be able to have that distinguishing and discernment, that when you get flood, and there was something that happened the other day actually at school, and we were talking about the experience that she had in her body and how everything kind of, she just wanted to disappear, and like as if it was horrible because everyone was looking at her for 2 minutes, and like we all know that experience. But to be able to then come home and like really talk about that, and then talk about how that can just get stored and be a repeating pattern unless we kind of just let it move. And again, the stories that the head starts to tell us and all of those things. And I think it's not just me. It's like, again, there's just so much more, not everywhere, but there is a swell and a wave of that self-awareness and literally knowing themselves, and more people understanding how the human condition, the multidimensional alchemist that we are actually operate, that we can be so much more empowered and full of ourselves because we're not getting clogged up by not being the quantum mechanics alchemists that we are.
100%. And I think, what I see in a lot of I don't have my own children. I actually spend an inordinate amount of time around children for someone who doesn't have children, because I am I'm an aunt of 6 and have many, many, many godchildren. And I love to be another adult. And I have always really believed that it takes a village, and that it's really important for our kids to have someone that they can go to, isn't immediate family, that they can trust and get another perspective from. And so I have consciously chosen to be that in a lot of different spaces. And I see a lot of fear around the future. And I see a lot of fear around like, where is this going? And what are they going to be? And what do we do? And is it okay? And that fear consciousness, right, which stops us from being full of ourselves and spirals us out. And so having the tools of alchemy, teaching them in everyday scenarios, like you're saying, like having a culture where people can come home and have emotional language and talk about it and not feel like they have to swallow it down or eat it or smoke it or, any of these things. Like, those are major positive changes that our generation have put in place, right? That we can do that. And also, like, I'm reminded that this career that I knew that I would have long before the internet was invented, and I was like, I will talk, I will doodle, I will travel the world, and I will help people see another perspective. The technology for that wasn't invented yet, and here we are. And so I feel like this is an important conversation of reminding people which tools are timeless and which lessons and what really matters, and how the tools that we have enable us to be full of ourselves regardless of where the external is taking any of us.
That's it. That's exactly it. The unconditionality of it. We get to choose to be unconditionally full of ourselves. We get to unconditionally choose joy and aliveness. And I think, again, that space is becoming so much more available because there is that awareness. And, there's a kind of shit, it really is down to me, personal responsibility piece of it. But yet that's so empowering that, hang on, everything that I'm looking for, I'm the answer to. How amazing is that?
Yeah. Do you remember the film Clerks?
Clerks, no.
Okay. I have this conversation with myself a lot, and it's a generational thing, and I suddenly age myself, but I know that you are. So Clerks was a film where it started in like a gas station, and the main character essentially was like, I'm not even supposed to be here today. And like all this bad shit happens on his shift, right? And the whole way through, instead of like really just owning it, or like every time something worse happens or the situation changes, it's that thing of like, Like, this is not my problem, right? And it really reminds me of Regan Hillier's kind of the piece that really landed with me when studying with her years ago of like, you may not have created it, but if it's in your field, it's your responsibility. And
100.
there's a lot of that I feel like we get to talk to, right? Like being full of yourself isn't just, look at me. Like I get to say and do whatever I want. Like being full of yourself is taking ownership for what's in your field.
Yeah, taking ownership for what's in your field, which is just like exciting. And I was having a conversation with a client just this morning about this. It's just like, how can we get, and we're allowed to have days and afternoons where I just like, oh, what today? Like, but that we can make a mental note and put it in our, journal and like, I'm coming back for you. That if that surge of anger comes to us or the abandoned one just keeps showing up, it's like, oh, great. I've got something else to work on. And knowing that when we work on it for us, we work on it for our mother, and we work on it for our granddaughters, and we worked on it for our great grandmother, and we get to change the trajectory. So again, I think the more that is being understood, is what the mystics and the yogis and the alchemists have known for eons, but what quantum science is so confirming now, it's like this retrospective, the decisions we're making now change the field retrospectively and all of that stuff. So again, it gets super exciting when we're in our life artistry that, and so again, for me, a big bit of the invitation, and I can feel it rising. I don't know yet. I don't know what it's going to look like, but, and maybe my kids will reject it. That's fine. But I have this sense that part of my voice and part of my teaching gets to be for the young ones as well as, it's quite interesting since my mum died 10 years ago, Ebony, how so many women have come into my space that are kind of like my mother's age. Since the last 10 years, I've suddenly got kind of like, it's been really beautiful, but it's been super interesting to see how suddenly I got all these women that were like 30 years older than me coming to my retreat, coming to things like, I don't know. I feel like there's been a connection for that, and it's been really beautiful. And some clients that I've had that have been older, it's almost sort of like this opportunity that's allowed me to do deeper ancestral work with my mum through that. Even it's been a real gift.
That makes
like 100%
and complete sense. I had an aha actually the other day, working with a client who is a man and who has codes 1 and 2 in his chart. And I was like, well, and then another one came in and he also has codes 1 and 2 in his chart, 2 and 1, I should say, and then another, and then another. And I was like, what is this? Like, I don't have codes 1 or 2. I don't have anything that correlates with it. Like,
your dad does.
He does. And my Chiron is in gate 2. And it's in his unconscious as well, right? And so I was like, I love it when we can see the ancestral and spiritual DNA wiring through our codes like that. And so it just reminded me of like, I can't do my dad's healing. He is not my responsibility. But I can work on my Chiron, and I can pull in, apparently not consciously, right? People where I can help and work with theirs, which is in turn healing mine, which is in turn healing his, which is then bouncing back. And for me, that's why this work, it's like, it's spiritual and esoteric until we ground it in the like, oh, actually there are like really clear scientific strings.
Totally. And that's the alchemy, right? And to recognize and claim and be fully full of ourselves of that bit too. And so again, I think part of the exciting piece of these times is we are growing out, or there is a maturity from the stigma of woo-woo into like, this is just really like, we are really, really cool human beings, and we can make a profound difference when we become that expert archer, alchemist and archer. Like, yeah.
I also think, and thank you for this because it just landed, it's like there's a part of being full of myself, which I've always understood as reclaiming my range and reclaiming the vastness of you're too much, right? When you are full of yourself, when you're being your full and whole self, it is overwhelming and you are intense, right? And so shut it down and just present this much of myself. And there was such a thing for me for such a long time of like, women can either be beautiful or they can be clever, but don't you dare be both, because that is intimidating. And I was already told you're intimidating as it is, right? So it's like, dumb myself down and get a bit fat and then I'll get left alone. And none of that's on purpose or consciously, right? But we do these things. And so this reclamation of fullness is just about like having a big personality, but it's really about like owning our own vastness and how much we can hold and move with. And then like play, right? Like string, fine tune with precision. I see so much of my alchemy these days being like retuning the strings of myself and my lineage, both forward and back, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And yeah. And I think, if we talk about the risk, I want to say that, or the possibility of that being corrupted. Again, a bit of a conversation we're having before we kind of press play on this is can't think what the word is now, Ebony, but the chronic distraction of the youth and robbing them of that source connection through technology or other things. And so I think the biggest thing that we can do as beacons, knowing that our signal and our broadcast is a radio wave, is a signal that other people can pick up on and piggyback up off and amplify and compound. And the more of us do it, the compound happens. Is to, one, teach people about themselves, but hold spaces of silence and letting people fully feel the fullness of themselves.
It's given me like organ chills. Like parts of me are like coming back online as you say that, because if part of my legacy in the world gets to be that becoming full of yourself is about depth rather than vanity, then that is fucking cool. And I'm good with that. The part of me that was like, oh, I'm so vain, or I shouldn't look at myself. And it's like, actually, in so much of my work has been about holding my own gaze. So much of my own work has been like, can you just look? Can you stay through the discomfort of other people finding it uncomfortable that you're looking at yourself? You shouldn't look at yourself. You shouldn't, I can remember the first time somebody said, you're like, you're really vain, stop looking at yourself. And now I'm like, you don't understand. I wasn't looking at myself because I think I'm anything. I was looking at myself because I'm a shapeshifter. And I'm like, is this right? And I have completely open G center, and I have days and days and days where I'm like, how are you? I just don't recognize myself. And I see our youth, again, like accused of vanity. And it's like, well, what if they're just trying to get to know themselves and this is their way
in? Yeah. I think, it's making me think of something that I say as a guidance point into like a yoga asana. It's like if we're doing a forward bend, nothing wrong with doing a forward bend in the sense that there's nothing wrong with, beautifying. Like as a species, we're good at that and we do that. But it's the piece of, as much as you go forward, can you energetically put guy ropes back and tether yourself back and go down and go up and go in all directions? So it is that piece, right, of always. It's like, if we're gonna put some more ink on our body or lipstick on or whatever, like,
Yeah.
hey, great. But can we also know that expression in 3D manifest form gets met and matched multidimensionally and in and down, and if we're only doing it on a 3D surface level,
or if we're only doing what everyone else is doing, right, and just have a look at eyebrow fashion throughout the last 30 years to get an idea of like doing what everyone else is doing and the insanity of that. But it reminds me, I remember when I shaved my head, and I did it because I was like, the only thing beautiful about me is my hair. And I was like, okay, I'm attached to it. It's got to go.
I did that.
So I hated it. I hated the 4 years till it grew back, right? It was horrible. And I'm thinking about doing it again right now. And it's like, people are like, why would you get rid of the hair that you loved? And it's like,
you did it.
Because it's like, because it's an experience.
Yeah, I say don't do it. I mean, do it. It is an experience, and it is good to challenge ourselves on our attachments, right? Our physical attachments. I mean, that's the whole piece of why people in a spiritual disciplined order say only wear orange or only wear red and shave their head, because it strips back those attachments that can be distractions from seeing what is actually there.
Yeah. And I love this because for me, it's like, this is the conversation about the truth of who we are. The only way, some people know the truth of who they are. Some people have a very clear identity, right? Like, and it's fixed, and mine really isn't, but that doesn't mean that I'm nothing. Right? Like, I don't know, I think this piece of like the truth of who we are and our own fullness can never be prescribed by anybody else. The only person, a bit like in yoga, when from the outside, I'm like, I can't tell whether you are holding your banders right now or not. I can't tell if you're on your comfortable edge of resistance. I can't tell if you're performing or overextending. I can make an educated guess, but also it doesn't matter if I can tell. It's your journey, and your journey is not about, did I do it right? Do you like me? Am I good enough? Like, your journey is, can you be with and in yourself,
Yeah, and I guess then to have that, you saying about fixed identity, I guess is to really ask ourselves, in the face of all identity, it's like, where's that identity being given from? And to have that piece. So when things do feel very fixed or rigid for people, this is just the way I am, to really ask, where's that coming from? And if we think of a child, who first knows themselves as they get to know themselves through the reflection of their caregivers in the outside world, that then gives them the experience of, oh, I must be a good girl, or I'm a naughty girl, because that seems to be what everybody tells me all the time, just in a very symbolistic form. And so, in the true sense, I think, of our alchemy and our infinite potential, we are ever changing, and that gets really exciting, that we can actually wake up every morning and run to the bathroom mirror with the excitement of who's actually there this morning. We shouldn't, though. Like, in a way, it's like, it's exciting. We think we already know, and it's like, well, that's it. I'm going to attach and hold on to that.
Yeah, and I'm aware of time we could talk about it forever, but I also feel like when I'm talking about the truth of who we are, right, and identity, I actually don't mean it in terms of like self-concept. I mean it as signature, vibration, and frequency. And what came
Yeah.
it, right? Because I'm sort of talking about like open G center and a defined G center channels in that, but then also other things as well, like our own vibration. And one of the things that I don't see, but other people are like, or like, it's so clear, is my style of art, for example, which was never taught, isn't learned, isn't copied, like isn't anything. It's just me creating, and I think they all look completely different. And everyone around me is like, no, I could look at it and go, that's an ebony, right? Because it's an ebony. And I'm like, okay, what is it about it that makes it a me? And then they'll describe it, and it's almost like they're describing my personality, because what they're describing is the signature. And that's why sometimes for me, I'm like, it doesn't matter whether I'm looking at human design, when I'm looking at astrology, numerology, your body, your stance, whether you've dropped some leaves on the floor, like all of it's the same, because it all comes from.
Yes, exactly. No, I know what you mean. I know what you're, and it's that soul contract bit, right? Whatever. It's like we're not all the same, and we can't kind of just get rid of bits and then be like somebody else. It's like we come through with a signature frequency, and really our job is to outgrow the disturbance and the distraction and the crackle on the line, so that we can fully be like, oh.
And that's what I'm referring to when I say be your full self. And it's when I hear you refer to like the truth of who you are, that's what I'm sensing that you mean.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, look at that. And we've gone full circle. I really loved this conversation, and I've loved it because I feel like the art of conversation is also often being lost. It has to have a beginning and a middle and an end, and it has to be even, and we have to make each other look good. And there are so many rules, whereas actual conversation is art, is poetry, is an exploration of something. And this has been a beautiful example of that. So thank you so much for your presence and your energy and your input.
Thank you. And yes, I think so much of the art of conversation is the art of listening. So it's been lovely to listen to your field and have you listen to mine, and let it be a co-creative piece of art. Thank you, Ebony.
Real pleasure. People want to come and learn more about retreats and all of your offerings, actually, which are so alive and magical. Where is the best place for them? I'll put everything obviously in the show notes, but where is the best place for them to come in the first instance?
I guess in the first instance, it would either be to come onto Instagram. I mean, I'm not a massive social media presence, but I am there, and come and have a conversation with me in my DMs. It's a nice thing to do. Or my website. So come onto my website and sign up for my newsletter. That's where I really write and connect to people on a regular basis. I like writing, and my email list is very much alive, and that's where I like to communicate. So those places.
And I always like to ask that question because we all have our favorites, right? Like if email didn't exist, I wouldn't mind. Like it's not a place I go for fun. Whereas I do love to go on my Instagram for like, and that's such my Gemini descendant. I'm like, little bits of stimulation, right, enough now. And so I think it's really important to ask people. So if you are listening or watching, thank you. And if you've enjoyed this, go and sign up for Dory's newsletter and connect with her on Instagram. Thank you, my love. Any last nuggets?
I mean, yes, I always just want to, if I could speak to every single person on this planet, it's just to say that you are free and you're beautiful, and let that freedom and that beauty shine through. And we're standing at a really important time, guys, whoever's listening to this on the planet. So each one of us, it's like the compound of the compounding of the In Harmony Orchestra, and we each matter. So take time, drop into silence, know that you're free, know that you're beautiful, and add to the symphony as we birth a new world.
Thank you for tuning in to Becoming Full of Yourself. If you found a resonance here, subscribe, share it with someone who's ready to reclaim their fullness, and leave a review to help others find this work. For more resources, rituals, real talk on living a fully fulfilled life, head to ebonyallard.com. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be true to yourself.